#Finance Podcast, brought to you by Public Entrepreneur Magazine. I'm your host, Grace Pedota, and I'm here with Richard Carleton, CEO of the Canadian Securities Exchange. Hi, Richard. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Grace. I'm well, thank you.
Good. So one of the things I love about working at the CSE actually is that today I brought in my ukulele because a coworker of ours is starting a little band at home. So it turns out that on the same day that I'm doing Richard's podcast, I bring in the ukulele, and it turns out that Richard can actually play the ukulele. So I brought it into the studio for you to play for our guests today, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, until this morning, it had probably been 35 years since I touched the ukulele, but I did tune this up earlier.
Oh.
There's G7, G7, F, G7, C. And then you can do power chords, which people don't really understand with ukulele, but...
We just need like a
so there was
margarita in here.
Yeah, that was a classic crowbar riff, by the way.
Oh,
so
nice.
I love playing the ukulele. In fact, I think when I was about 9 years old, I converted my ukulele into an electric ukulele.
Oh, wow.
With like a little amplifier kit, 2 transistors or something like that. So
how do you do that?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You create a pickup and you tape it to the back of the ukulele.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And what color was it?
It was kind of a blonde wood. Might have been oak or something like that. But in fact, I've still got it somewhere. I'm definitely going to find it.
Yeah, you got to bring it in.
And I'm joining the band. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're going to start our own band at work. It's going to be great. I wonder who would be the singer. You could sing, right?
I have performed publicly along with Rob Cook and Mark Faulkner and a number of the other folks that worked at the other exchange a long time ago. We had a tradition at the leaving parties, of which there were, of course, a lot over the years, of writing songs and then singing them for the person who was leaving. And we've done a number of public gigs over the years.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess we'll save that for our next Christmas party. I'm looking forward to it.
Could be.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I've been so curious about, is why did you choose to sit next to like the first office from the reception area? Like I, like to be in my own space, have my, earphones in and, have my own area. But why that area?
Well, it was sort of the process of elimination. And I've had to adjust on the fly here because earlier in the week I was in New York City and I would have said process of elimination. But in any event, I really like the meeting room that is, of course, now the broadcast center, right? So that was my first choice. And they said, no, you can't have that. It's going to be the broadcast center. And it's spectacular, right? It's big, has the south view and everything. So then I thought, maybe that meeting room that's in the northeast corner of the building, like corner office, 72nd floor, First Canadian Place, that would be great. And then we realized, one, it has that huge, ugly concrete column, like right in the corner. And also, none of our furniture actually fits in there. And so that one was out. So, the next choice was, it's actually the next biggest office in the place. And as you've seen, my collection of mementos and stuff from a career well spent, I guess. Yeah. I needed just a little more space to be able to display it properly. So.
Yeah. And would you say that your office kind of looks like an ideal man cave that you would have, like at your own house, or your...
Well, combined with the meeting room across the way, which of course has 2 big screen televisions, critically important, of course. Now, I still have a bit of a hike to the refrigerator in the other boardroom, I guess. So, we're well away from, ideal. Yeah. And of course, there isn't, pool table and, my other man caves actually tend to have, libraries and, working fireplace and, that kind of thing. So overstuffed leather chairs, oriental carpets and all that stuff. Well, a guy can dream, right?
Right.
But, so it's not we've got some work to do on that front.
Yeah, I think you were the only one who had like the boxes unpacked, like not unpacked for the longest at the office. So it was.
Yeah, but remember, I was also away for 3 weeks when we moved.
Yes,
right?
you were.
Did I mention I was in Davos, darling?
Yeah. How was that, by the way?
Squaw Valley after that, and then Miami as well. Davos was really interesting.
Yeah.
We took this project on pretty much at the last minute, maybe 6 weeks or so before the actual event. Mm-hmm. And we thought it might be an interesting opportunity for issuers and dealers and some of the other folks in our ecosystem to basically showcase the capabilities of the Canadian securities industry to finance a sunrise industry, which is really attracting a lot of interest on a global scale. And, so off we went on a Sunday night and, got into beautiful Switzerland on a Monday morning, drove up to Davos, got to the hotel, which, I kind of joked was in France. It wasn't, but it was still a fair ways away from Davos because our last minute, meant that, we were actually nowhere close to Davos. In any event, so we went in on the Monday night and got our accreditation. And of course, security is very tight. And, the Swiss are rather humorless about, things like that for obvious reasons. So, and then we we walked down the promenade, which is the main street of Davos. And, Davos is actually a reasonably large town by, kind of alpine village standards. It's not a village. I think the hockey team there has about a 6,000 or 7,000 seat arena. So, there are a lot of people that can, move around in Davos, a lot of hotels and restaurants and so on.
And this was your first time in Davos?
No, actually. First time at the World Economic Forum. Right. But I've skied a lot in Europe over the years and been through Davos and Klosters, which is nearby, before. But in any event, so we were just looking around and we were going to see our storefront where we were going to be doing events for the rest of the week. And, our initial impression was, oh, my God, we're in the only dive bar in Davos. Now, again, it wasn't, a real dive bar, but it was perhaps not the nicest bar in the town of Davos. But in any event, we then went around and we saw some of the other venues that were various corporations and countries and so on were hosting events. And as I've described it, it was a little bit like going to a gigantic wedding reception where you didn't really know anybody, but the food and the wine and everything was just tremendous. And, there was, gifts being given out all over the place. So I thought,
and how did you introduce yourself to people? Like, was it hard to kind of introduce who you are and what we're doing and what the CSE was about? Not
so much, because really everybody's there to learn and network and meet people and so on. So yeah, it's people are very much willing to engage with folks and sort of figure out what's going on. But no, you're right. I mean, one of the concerns that we had was, how are we going to get the word out that people should be dropping by the Canada Cannabis House in Davos to see the programs that we were putting on during the afternoons from Tuesday through Thursday. And so we had some exposure on the Davos app and an opportunity for people to sign up ahead of time. But aside from that, there was a lot of sort of walk-up traffic and street presence and all of that sort of thing. So in any event, as things turned out, we went back, of course, on the Tuesday morning and got set up. And by the time we were getting ready to start, the place was packed. And
wow.
And so combination of word of mouth and talking to people at the event on the Monday night, let's say. And we'd also had a certain amount of pickup in the press as well. So people knew to look for us, and so they came out. And, within a short period of time, I looked around, I saw the, issuers and folks who were part of our group. They were exchanging business cards. They were talking to people from Europe in the industry, policymakers from different parts of the world, and just generally doing business and making connections, which is, really what we had intended and hoped.
Did you have any doubt that may not have happened, or?
Well, until it actually happens and you see it work, then, you're always, a little concerned. But
and you've probably traveled a lot, given your your position and what you've accomplished.
Rumor has it.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this one of the best experiences that you've had? Like what?
Yeah, with this sort of thing, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, but, one of the things that I will say is that we were really well supported from the issuer community. And so, and of course, it wasn't just CSE issuers. So, in addition to Kevin Murphy from the CEO from Acreage, who's one of our largest listed companies and, growing incredibly fast in the U.S. cannabis market. But we also had Bruce Linton, who's the CEO of Canopy, of course, listed on the other exchange in Canada. Bruce is obviously the CEO of the largest cannabis company in the world by market capitalization. Bruce was really generous with his time, with us, with other people, in our group, and certainly with members of the media. And, there were a lot of folks that were there to seek Bruce out to, talk about different aspects of the business and opportunities in their particular part of the world, potentially for Canopy and some of the other companies. So, as I say, he was great. We also had Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, who's now a chairman of a cannabis issuer based in Israel, still a private company, not yet in the public markets. And, Ehud was scheduled to present with us on Thursday afternoon, but he actually came on Tuesday and he was with us all week. And again, very generous with his time, very engaging with, again, the folks who were there. And with the press. And we actually, again, as the week went on, we actually found that we had more and more press opportunities as well.
Oh, great.
And, both with print media as well as broadcast media. And I guess one of the highlights of the week was doing a live interview with Marcy Ian on CTV News with, our colleague James Black holding his iPhone and FaceTiming me.
Told me that.
and James did really well, because I think the interview was about 3.5 minutes, and I don't know that I could hold my arms steady for 3.5 minutes like that. And I'm sure he was his arms were burning by the time we ended. But again, went very well and got great feedback from it.
That's great. And I mean, another thing that I kind of wonder as well when I first started working at the CSE is that, like, at some point you had to make a decision about embracing the cannabis industry. And, did you get any kind of like non-supportive people when you decided to embrace the cannabis industry? Like, was there anyone
aside from our competitors, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, like your family members or friends, or was anyone really stick their nose up at it?
No, for the most part, they think it's hysterical.
Yeah,
as do I for the most part. But the truth of the matter is that as an exchange, people constantly ask us, what are you guys focusing on? What are you trying to do? What sort of companies are you trying to get? And, we can actually spend a lot of time and money chasing after companies, and we might form the view that, say U.S. technology companies from venture capital funds that are maybe the fourth or fifth best performing company in a VC's portfolio, for example, should be prime candidates because they're not unicorns. They won't get big enough to be public market companies in the United States, but they still have the potential to be successful businesses, and
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I say, we can think all of these great thoughts. It doesn't matter. What matters is what companies are investors putting money into right now.
Right.
And those are the companies that are going to show up on the exchange. And so, we do have the opportunity to see, and usually with maybe a 3 to 6 month lead time in advance, of course, what kinds of companies are getting funded, and what the makeup of the market is going to look like in a 3 to 6 month time horizon. So we saw, for example, last year, cannabis was obviously a big part of the headline for the CSE. But mining, for example, actually had a very impressive rebound in the last 2 quarters of 2018.
That's one of the things I picked out the most in your year in review was, I was shocked by how many mining companies we actually had listed.
No, that's right. And obviously with real challenges in the underlying commodity prices. But, I think investors had determined that, there were still projects which deserved financing and had been languishing for a number of years, and they could, really pick and choose between, again, some very compelling mining projects, for example,
right.
And they did attract investment, and they did, in fact, get listed. So, but going back to your, the original question, we were presented with a small handful of companies back in the spring of 2014 who are applying to secure licenses from Health Canada to basically provide marijuana into the Canadian medical market.
Right.
But there was a lot of interest around that because, people speculated that, these companies would be the leaders if, as, and when there was legalization of recreational use. And if you looked at the scale of the operations that they were looking to build, Aurora, for example, in particular, that, clearly any one of these operations could grow all of the medical marijuana that was required at the time. Clearly they were scaling up for something else. Mm-hmm. We looked at the companies and determined that they were perfectly suitable entrants into the public capital markets.
Yeah.
Our main concern, as always, with any company is about the quality and the level of the disclosure that they provide, both when they come into the markets in the form of a listing statement or the prospectus that they file if it's an IPO, and then, of course, their ongoing continuous disclosure.
And do you think that the skill sets that you kind of have working for other exchanges helped you with this process?
Oh, well, absolutely. I, have picked up a thing or two about how exchanges work over the course of, we're not going to say how long at this point, but...
No, but like seeing the red flags with companies like you were just talking about and, like helping you kind of see them more and to give you that kind of skill set to see what to look for. Yeah.
Well, it's obviously not just me. Yeah. I mean, we obviously have an extremely experienced team here at the Canadian Securities Exchange. And folks that have been active, more of us than I hate to admit. I think we're probably into our fourth decade in the industry. So, as I say, we have a very solid understanding and grasp of the fundamentals of, not just obviously the appropriate way of regulating a company from an exchange perspective, but also, the requirements from securities law, corporate law, and
Yeah, you were a lawyer before, right? You practiced law.
Actually, still am. In a sense, but but yeah, I'm a recovering lawyer, I guess is how
a recovering lawyer. And what kind of skills do you think that you learned from being a lawyer? Did you put forth to the exchange here and building the exchange?
Well, I guess you may not know, but I was actually in house with the Legacy Exchange Group here in Toronto for 8 years, I guess, before I jumped over into the business management side of that exchange, which gave me an interesting opportunity to learn lots of different aspects of the business. So I had a reasonably good grasp of the trading processes, what the market data people did, trading technology, because I was involved in both the acquisition and licensing of technology that the exchange was both using and developing. And the exchange is doing a new blockchain technology, am I correct? That's one of the projects that we have underway. Okay. Absolutely. But, the interesting thing there is that, again, leaving aside the technology, which is, new and shiny and people get quite excited about, the real interest for us is, helping people attack the costs, risk, and inefficiencies associated with the current clearing and settlement process. At the same time, we want to give issuers the opportunity to develop new and interesting securities for the market that will help them cut their costs and improve a number of things that they currently have to do, like proxy voting for shareholder approval, shareholder communications, and investor relations. The increased visibility into who their beneficial shareholders are is really going to, change a lot of how companies engage with the market in the future. And, I probably can't even begin to predict how different it will be 10, 15, 20 years from now. But this is really the first step in what will be, I think, a very exciting journey for a lot of folks. And did you always know that this is kind of what you wanted to do? Like when you were younger, like what did you want to be? Is it this? I think on my grade 5, let's see now, I probably wanted to be an astronaut, an engineer, and I think lawyer was number 3. Oh, and now my dad was a lawyer, so, that was sort of an obvious thing. the astronaut and the engineering thing went away when I realized that I had little aptitude for math.
Well, there's still time.
Well, of course, the funny thing is I have done work in the quantitative finance sphere as well. And, the math guys were all working for me at that point. So,
And what have you learned growing this company in the last years?
Wow, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I became CEO in July of 2011, the future of the organization was not assured. I guess let's leave it at that. We had to lead a recapitalization of the company. There were a number of balance sheet issues that we had to address, and it was also the case that we probably had a bit of a technology deficit vis-a-vis some of our competitors, and although our message to the junior capital market was beginning to get some traction, we knew we still had a lot of work to do. And so it was, I can't say that, there was any aha moment or silver bullets or anything on any of those things, but we did successfully after a year and a half or so. And I think talking to, well over 100 groups about investing in the organization. And it was obviously not just here, but, across Canada, the United States, and various other places. I think I wore out a lot of pairs of shoes that year, that year and a half.
Yeah.
But eventually the, Tom Caldwell and Urbana Corporation agreed to lead a recapitalization of the company. Mr. Caldwell also agreed to become chair of the organization. That got us back on our financial feet and enabled us to make some investments that, we'd been kind of putting off. About 6 or 7 months later, I got a phone call one warm, humid August afternoon from Ned Goodman. Wanted to come over and see me. And so Ned explained that he was extremely impressed with what we'd done, what we'd achieved, wanted to help us get to new heights.
I think I met Ned Goodman with you, actually, in London, England, the first time, I think, that for Minds and Money. He was accepting an award, I think, on behalf of his dad.
That was actually...
sorry, it was
that
John.
Was his son.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Ned wasn't able to travel that December, I guess it was. But in any event, so Ned also invested in the organization and served as vice chair of the organization. But more importantly than any of that, Ned was our most vocal advocate.
Yeah.
Publicly, in private. He probably saw more transactions or investment opportunities than maybe anybody in the city. And he would always end the meeting by saying, and one more condition, if I invest in this company and you go public, you will have to list on the Canadian Securities Exchange. So Ned was, as I say, a tremendous supporter of the organization. And, we really, really, owe a great debt to Ned for his support at a critical time in the organization.
And you guys are still friends, keeping contact?
Well, Ned's not as well as he would wish at this point. So he's basically pulled back from all of his business interests at this point. So, as I say, all the best to Ned.
Yeah. And with this busy schedule and you must be a busy person, what do you kind of do to relax?
You mean aside from strumming the ukulele periodically?
Yeah.
So, I guess it's sort of, kind of, my wife and I have a place up near Collingwood. We ski in the winter. I play golf. We cycle and so on in the summertime. And my wife has a wonderful garden out there that she's been whipping into shape over the last 5 years or so. And we, as I say, we like to spend a lot of time there. We also, our GTA area place is actually a horse farm. That also keeps us on our toes from time to time. So,
that's great.
And we have 2 boys, 27, 29. They're grown up and, launched in their own careers at this point.
And what do they do?
The older son is married, lives in Ottawa, and works for the federal government.
Oh, great.
And The younger guy is a commercial pilot and flight instructor.
Wow.
And he's been flying since he was 14, actually.
Oh, great.
And I still say the bravest thing I have ever done in my life. So you kind of
became an astronaut.
Yeah.
Your son did.
Well, as I say, the bravest thing I've ever done in my life was let him fly me up to Collingwood when he was 16,
wow.
I think.
That's so cool of you to let him do that. Wow.
Cool isn't necessarily the word I was.
Were you scared?
Yes, I was. Actually, it was pretty funny because, at that time I had, a lot of friends who were taking their children driving for the first time.
Yeah.
And I kept hearing all of these stories like, oh, it was terrible. And I'm, listening to all of these stories in my mind as I'm 5,000 feet over Barrie doing 120 knots with my son in command of the aircraft. But
that's so fun. Was it just you and your son in the airplane, or was it, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so that was fun. I was just enormously proud of him.
Oh, that's nice.
And it was very funny because, of course, 16-year-old boys can be slightly irresponsible from time to time. You may have heard.
Yeah.
And, the pilot persona just infused him completely when he got into the cockpit. So all of the checklists and, just very, very careful and everything else I can see. And he's a wonderful teacher. So as I say, I think he's doing really well.
Well, that's great. And do you see any of the kind of skills, have you passed down any skills to your two sons that you kind of learned throughout your career?
well, it depends, it was, the old joke with parents, right, is when the kids are behaving well, it's like, oh yes, it was all me and, no genetic material from, your wife kind of thing. But in any event, yes, they're argumentative and they're very, what do I want to say, glib talkers and good vocabulary and they're musical as well.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't just play the ukulele, I also played
just like you. They
played the trombone and actually with some
and a recorder. I think
places.
You said the recorder?
Yeah, I was a terrible recorder player though.
But your son's better, right? Remember you were saying he was, yeah.
the older son actually is a really good guitar player.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's good. So summer's coming up and I need some travel tips. Can you suggest anywhere to go, seeing as you're probably well traveled by now?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I haven't been to Africa, although I've seen it from a distance. And the same thing actually with South America, which is on my bucket list, is to get to South America. I have traveled pretty much everywhere in Europe. A couple of my favorite places are Sardinia and Corsica. Spectacular coastline, great beaches, and not crowded compared with some of the other parts of Italy and France, of course. I'm a real fan of the lifestyle in Provence. I actually lived in France as a student many years ago and got to know the country reasonably well. I wouldn't suggest going to China in the summertime. It is hot.
Really? Okay.
Really, really hot.
I heard there's a lot of people as well, so it's probably humid and just,
yes. Yes, yeah. all of that. And that's a great point because I've been to the Terracotta Warriors at Xi'an, around Shanghai, in the south, and Shenzhen, and obviously Beijing a number of times. The big national monuments, around the Forbidden City and the Moon Tower and so on in the south end of Beijing, again, in the summertime are, very, very crowded. And Beijing is hot, humid, and very dusty.
So you like to travel with less crowds, like you don't?
Yeah, well, again, we talked earlier about, like to ski and like to go to Europe, Western North America, and so on. I really enjoy London as a city. Paris obviously is a big favorite. Rome is great. I mean, these aren't exactly, off the beaten track new ideas, but as I say, I really do enjoy all those places. One of the, and again, it's also become a big favorite on the international circuit. But Prague is one of my favorite European cities.
Oh, why?
Has the old town. Has actually been preserved from the 15th century, I think. And the buildings are very obviously extremely old, but well preserved and maintained. The palaces, the bridges, and everything are absolutely exquisite. Same with Stockholm, actually, as well. The original city of Stockholm is on an island that's now surrounded by the modern city. And the streets, the cobblestones that are, barely 2 horses wide kind of thing, and winding around.
That's like Montreal, and you're from Montreal originally, right?
Oh,
is it?
Goodness,
no. Okay, I thought I heard that.
No, I was born, south of Bloor Street, actually.
Oh,
and,
really?
Torontonian, basically. But
okay.
In any event, as I say, Stockholm is actually just spectacular from an architectural perspective, and the funny thing is that every time I've been to Stockholm, and I've been in the summer, spring, fall, winter kind of thing, the weather is always identical to what you leave behind in Toronto.
Wow.
You feel like you've gone halfway across the world, and it's it's cold but not too cold in the winter. And in the summer, it's nice, but it's again, it's not too hot. So it's a real treat.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and letting me get to know you a little bit more, as well as our audience. And have a great weekend.
My pleasure. Thanks, and the same to you, Grace.
Hi, it's Grace from the CSE, reminding you to make sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates on our listed companies, as well as new listing alerts. For more in-depth content, be sure to pick up our free quarterly magazine, Public Entrepreneur, available online at thecse.com.